Hello. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Together, we explore topics of interest to in-house lawyers. We cover career, practice tips, leadership, the future of law, mental health, legal tech, and much, much more. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. Finally, have fun. In-house legal practice is a serious business, but you don't have to take yourself seriously. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. I'm excited to have this conversation. For the last few months, I have seen a proliferation of ethics and ethics-related jobs, including in legal field. And I'm really curious about it. So I thought I would talk to someone who actually knows a thing or two about it. And it turns out my friend Rob knows quite a lot about it. He actually wrote a book about it, about ethics and integrity. So I thought as an in-house professional, I want to learn more about it and I want to learn it from the pro. And I actually wanted to have an excuse to have conversation with Rob. So without further ado, Rob, welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Please introduce yourself.
Olga, thanks for having me. And again, my name is Robert Chesnut. I wrote a book. The book's called Intentional Integrity. And it's based on, my experiences, working as a lawyer for, over 35 years now. I was formerly the general counsel at Airbnb and at Chegg Inc. And I spent a number of years at eBay as well.
I love that. So your most recent job is at Airbnb. What was your focus there?
Well, I was the general counsel of the company. But while I was the general counsel, the Me Too movement started. And I noticed a lot of tech companies were coming under increased focus for bad behavior in the company. Uber comes to mind in particular, that was inspired in my work. And it got me really thinking about, I don't want to sit back as a general counsel and just wait for a problem. I would love to have an impact on the culture of a company and prevent problems. So the question that it hit me one day was, how do you drive integrity into the culture of a company? How can you have an impact so that you can protect the brand from the kind of risk that we've seen so many other companies? And it led to some interesting insights and some changes at the company. And it actually led to me taking an additional role of chief ethics officer while I was at the company.
So we loosely use terms ethics and integrity interchangeably. Is there a difference?
It's a great question. I use them interchangeably, but I like the word integrity in particular. I think it resonates with people more. The words like ethics and compliance, I hate to say this to lawyers, but I think lawyers, people give it a lawyerly look, and that's not always positive. Look at the word compliance. The word compliance comes from the word comply, and comply has connotations of being required to do something by some higher authority. In other words, you're doing it because you have to do it. And a lot of times people look at ethics and compliance as something I've got to do because the legal department tells me I've got to do it. And they often do it grudgingly. I think, look, as lawyers, all of us have run around saying we've got to get to 100% compliance on this video. Everyone's got to watch it. And what I really think is more effective is getting people to do something because it's the right thing to do and because it resonates with their values personally. And when you can layer on this notion of integrity and doing something because it's the right thing to do, it actually makes compliance and ethics stronger at the company because people are bought into it with their hearts.
Buy in with a heart. I love that. That is a very interesting way to put it. That is usually not what you learn in law school, Rob.
Right. Yeah, a lot of stuff, when you're an in-house lawyer, you find out they didn't teach you about it in law school. You learn it on the fly. And what I found was that people can get a little tired of the legal department telling them to do things. So, we started doing a few things at Airbnb that were voluntary. And it's so important to understand the mission of your company. Why does your company exist? What's the North Star? What motivates people? Why do people want to work at that company? Why is your company good for the world? And that's what inspires people to come to work every day and work hard. And I think as lawyers, we want to get in touch with that, and we want to take advantage of that in a sense, because when you can get people to do the right thing because it's tied to the company's mission and the company's values, it's a lot more effective. So we started doing things, at orientation, for example, because when you can talk to people about integrity and doing the right thing at orientation near their first week, it can really have a big impact on the culture, because at that point, people are brand new to the company and you're helping them understand what the company's really all about. We started doing videos, little 3-minute videos, voluntary videos about integrity. And we didn't require people to watch them. And we had a little element of humor in the videos. And the videos became a part of the culture at the company. We found that over 60% of the company were voluntarily watching integrity videos because they were fun, because leaders were appearing in them and having a good time with them. But they help drive integrity into the culture and the everyday drumbeat of what's going on at the company. So you can have some fun with it as a lawyer as well.
I love that. So that shift in mind from comply and required, which is sort of a traditional role of a lawyer, to something more of from the heart, voluntary, exciting, fun even. As you're sort of putting a structure on this framework, how you operate as in-house leader in any level, right, from general counsel to associate counsel, whatever titles may be, what is the sort of mind shifts and actions required for a leader, especially a legal leader, to be effective and to make that transition from required and compliance to something much more organic and natural from the heart?
Yeah, I don't want to denigrate compliance. It's actually a critical part of what a company does. What I want to do is I want to make it more effective by layering integrity on top of it, and inspiring people and touching people's hearts and values, and getting folks to think more about the mission of the company and doing the right thing. That actually makes your compliance program more effective. I think too often lawyers feel like all they can talk about is the legal structure. And in reality, I think business wants lawyers to think like a business person. So by getting in touch with a company's mission and values, I think what I found in my experience is that it actually makes the business more effective. Getting the company more in touch with its values and its mission makes employees want to work harder. It inspires what they do. It also, I think, inspires your customers. So for me, this is all about ultimately making the business more effective as well.
So you had the chief ethics officer title, and we recently, I'm monitoring in-house legal jobs for fun and pleasure, and I've done some analysis on wording use. I've seen quite a lot of jobs around ethics and integrity. I guess it correlates with what we see with AI. This is a technology that raises a lot of integrity and ethics concerns, and so we see that to be ending up on legal department desk, which is where things end up, where you don't have a department to put them at. So we see counsel level jobs or even executive level jobs often cross-listed or listed with legal around ethics and integrity, and those terms are used loosely. And so I now know a few folks who have this title very explicitly. That's their full-time job or a big fraction of their job. Since you are one of the first people who actually had that job and probably had to write your job description, I'm curious how you think of that job. What do you do all day as a chief ethics officer? Like, what do you like do?
That's part of the challenge, Olga. It's like ethics and integrity are pretty vague terms. And I hate to break this to the listeners, but a lot of times people don't like going to the legal department. It's like, oh, I don't want to have to go to legal with this. And so I think your first big challenge is that ethics and integrity are somehow viewed in a legal department silo, and that's the worst, I think, approach to the whole thing. What I tried to do is give it away. Uh, in other words, legal doesn't own integrity. Everybody has to own it. So, one element of what we did was we rewrote our code of ethics, but it wasn't me as the chief integrity officer, or chief ethics officer rewriting it. We actually got people from all parts of the company involved. We found people who were not too seniors to be scary, but senior enough so that they were experienced, and we got them from all over: marketing, customer support, and finance, and different business units and different global offices, and invited them in. And we worked together as a group on redoing the code of ethics in the language of the company. Olga, too often code of ethics are things that are written by law firms, right? And the law firm sends it over, and you send out an email to everybody in the company, and they have to check the box saying that they've read it. That stuff doesn't move cultures. But what can move cultures is getting people from all across the company engaged with the idea of redoing the code of ethics, writing in the language of the company. And one advantage is you actually get a code of ethics that's more applicable to what the company really does in all of its different departments. But two is, when you're done, you've got 25, 30 ambassadors for the new code of ethics, because now these people are the folks that helped you on this are bought into it. They feel ownership over it because they did it. And then they go back to their departments really as ambassadors for what you're trying to do. We even gave them a title of ethics advisors, so that when they went back to their day jobs, they became the local or in department point of contact for ethics. And I think, that way, getting legal department, getting it out from this sort of silo, like I own ethics and integrity, and get into this notion of we all own it. And by giving it away and playing sort of a coordinating role with people who are embedded throughout the company, I think makes it a lot more effective.
I think you're generally more effective when you give things away
Right.
in life or ethics or anything, and you have some agreement that everyone owns the integrity. I think that's the point that you're driving toward, Rob. It's yes, you may have the lead coordinator or even the face of as the chief ethics officer, but having local representatives who've written and explain and then correct and organically rise issues so they can be escalated and changed, addressed everywhere. I think that that's kind of an important part of that job, isn't it?
Yes, well, you can't be everywhere. Lawyers aren't everywhere. And if you try, if you've got integrity or ethics in your title, and you try to run around everywhere and make sure that everyone is acting with ethics and integrity, you'll fail miserably, because you can't be everywhere. And in fact, you're fighting the tide of the fact that people are, the legal's here, or the lawyer's here. So I think the best way to fight that tide and actually get the waves behind you and get the wind at your back is to become a coordinator, give it away, give ownership to all, and become sort of a coordinator, spokesperson, cheerleader for a company-wide effort where everyone feels like they play a part in it.
You raised an interesting issue around, often policies, including ethics and integrity policies, are written by a law firm, and they're capable of writing one kind of prose, which is not the most inviting. I recently talked to the general counsel of Chanel, and they've gone through exercise of creating ethics and integrity rules and book and policy, and it was written in the language of Chanel with the very classy booklet of black and white because and I talked to the general counsel why she did it. She said because she's like, Olga, you have to understand we're in the fashion industry. People work for us because they care. I can't give them a policy. It has to look classy. It has to be Chanel. And I think what you are saying is basically the same thing. In the context of Airbnb or other companies you have been, that culture of a company, because Airbnb has a very different culture than Chanel, I am sure. I've been to headquarters a few times and I had lunch there. I know for a fact this is no Chanel. in the most positive way. How does a culture of a company, with some examples from Airbnb or others, affect the sort of the words used and how it's rolled out and who is at the table? I think you alluded a little bit, but I was just
Yeah.
curious because as chief ethics officer, I mean, I think you have a coordination role, but you also have an architect role.
Right.
And so, how did you architect for the culture of the company?
Yeah, every code of ethics isn't the same. It's not as if you can just take another company's code of ethics and copy it and change the name of the company and roll it out to your company and have it effective. Obviously, lying, cheating, and stealing and breaking the law is bad, but a lot of integrity is gray. And reasonable people can take different approaches. I'll give you one example, and that is, what can you take in the way of gifts from outside parties when you work at a company? So let's take Walmart for example. Walmart, as part of their code of ethics, has had a long-standing position against taking anything, and I mean anything. So there are stories that people who are meeting with Walmart, that if you try to give them a bottle of water, they'll pull out $1 from their pockets, pay you back. They're not going to take even a sandwich. And why? Well, because of Walmart's mission. Walmart's mission: low prices every day. So they believe that if their employees are accepting any gifts from third parties, even small hospitality, that's ultimately going to be reflected in the cost of goods. And the cost of goods, as that goes up, that raises the prices, and that's inconsistent with the mission. Let's take a look at Airbnb's mission. Airbnb's mission is to connect people, is to get people from behind their computers, going out and visiting other people in other parts of the world and connecting in a real sense, being in the neighborhoods and the like, and meeting people, because it's almost the old Mark Twain quote, travel is fatal to bias and prejudice. And that's going to make the world a better place. So a company that has a mission like that wants to foster these sort of small informal communications. So for Airbnb, accepting or giving the gift of a meal, a sandwich, cup of coffee, and the like is actually very consistent with the company's overall mission. So hospitality, small gifts are actually a very positive thing and allowed by the code of ethics. So I love the idea that every company can have its own take on what's ethical and what's right, because every company's unique. Every company's trying to have a different impact on the world, and and understanding that and making sure that your code reflects who you really are as a company, I think is critical to the success of what you're doing.
That is so great. I love those examples. Those are such great examples. It's simple and very relatable. And I think I'm not alone. You have a lot of folks who also share that likewise. And you have a few supporters who love everything you're sharing. So thank you, Rob, for that. That is fantastic. You alluded to lawyers, frankly, any stakeholder in the company being a business partner. That's very important. Somehow we have to reiterate this for lawyers because we have not learned this in law school. So I think we keep repeating it, but it's true for everyone. And one of the things you said that is that you can be a really key stakeholder in building culture. Again, one of the things you don't learn in school anywhere, and definitely not in law school. I'm curious, as a leader, as someone who's written books, how do culture is one of those things. It's even more amorphous than laws.
Right.
Something that is even more abstract, and like, how do you build something that kind of exists but kind of you can't put your finger on it? And especially, let me even make it more specific. As a lawyer, who you may not even think that that's your job, but as a stakeholder and leader, it is to be part of culture and build it. How do you go about it, given that you come with that whole baggage, legal baggage of not being the center of excitement in the universe?
You have to fight that, right? Because I think there can be a natural suspicion about lawyers. Maybe people had a bad experience with a lawyer at another company, and you've got to overcome that. One thing that we did, for example, was lawyers would sit with their business unit 2 or 3 days a week. I wanted them to really feel like a part of the team that they supported, show up at the meetings and the like, sit next to them every day. When it comes to remote work, I like certain aspects of remote work, but I think it's really important to have a hybrid and to be appearing in the office every day due to this idea of collisions. Tony Sue at Zappos talked about this. A lot of valuable work gets done because people bump into each other accidentally over a cup of coffee or at a lunchroom table or coming in and out of a building. They overhear something. They start a conversation informally. And a lot of great things happen because of that. And I really fight the idea that lawyers need to be isolated over in a corner of the building and people are just like slipping a contract under the door for them to review. I like the idea of lawyers being active participants in the culture and involved with the business as business partners. And another way to do it is to share goals. As a legal department, we would actually share some of the business goals as well, so that if we had 100% compliance on watching videos and checking the boxes on the code of ethics, but we missed business numbers, then we're not successful as a legal department. We need to understand that we're part of a business and that the business success is part of our job as well. And so integrating legal with the rest of the company, to me, is critical. And lawyers that come to us from law firms, that's a big shift. But it's something that I think is actually really rewarding and fulfilling once you get used to it as a lawyer.
Let me ask you, because I actually still want to pursue this. Legal owns ethics or integrity. And one of the things came up, and I was recently leading compliance and corporate counsel conversations in London. And one of the things came up among many, 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 many general counsel and senior lawyers, but not just in tech, is that in the age of AI, this ethics and integrity ended up on their desk. They now have more responsibility, maybe even a fancy title, not necessarily more budget and the same pay. And I love your optimism about sort of, hey, this is an opportunity to be even a bigger contributor and really shape the culture and to be a business stakeholders as everyone is in the company. But there is this sort of another side of things going to legal and why they end up in legal, partially because there is no home, but partially legal sometimes is the place where things end up without without a budget. And that's a real bummer, right? Because we know that for things to really matter in the business, there needs to be not just an owner, but a but sort of anchored in budget and goals and all of those things. What are your thoughts around this legal owning or being part of the ethics and integrity, and how to make sure that it's not just somewhere it goes to die or just looks good, but actually operationalized to be effective?
The first thing I do is I try to look at it in a very positive sense. I look at it as opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow professionally, and I think it's also an opportunity to demonstrate value. The fact that legal sometimes gets these sort of things, I mean, you can look at it as it's being dumped on legal because no one else understands it and it doesn't generate money. But I view it as an opportunity to grow your own skills personally, and also demonstrate how legal can add value. Now, that does mean, I think, that it's important to demonstrate, to use metrics, because what I really learned was that's the language of business. It may not be the language that you learned in law school or that you learned in a law firm, but it's a language I think you need to learn as you go in-house, and that is the language of numbers. And business people are comfortable looking at numbers. So I would try to when I take an area like that, to help folks understand its importance and understand what you're doing, to come up with metrics that demonstrate that value. And I'll give you an example. People say, well, how do you measure ethics and integrity? How successful you were? Well, one area, for example, was we would look at how many questions do we get around ethics and integrity and the code. In our view, ethics questions demonstrate that it's on people's mind, that they're thinking about it. So, for example, I would talk to some people. It's like, well, Rob, we don't have any ethics or integrity problems. We've got a hotline, and we never get any phone calls. And my response to that is, well, that's the first sign of a problem, because a healthy culture when it comes to ethics and integrity is one where people are talking about it and engaged with it. So we started measuring that engagement, and we measured it several different ways. How many inquiries do you get to the hotline? How many inquiries does HR get, or legal? But we also started measuring our ethics advisors. How many questions do our ethics advisors get? And we started tracking them. And after our ethics advisor program rolled out, which by the way, the ethics advisor program didn't cost any money at all. It was people who were voluntarily in other roles throughout the company doing it because it spoke to their heart and they understood its importance and they understood it grew their career. What we found was that after rolling out the ethics advisor program, the number of inquiries about ethics issues and the number of questions that were raised more than tripled. And in fact, the number one way that these questions came in was through the ethics advisor program. So we could actually demonstrate that it was a bigger part of the culture and being talked about more within the company by rolling out a program like that. And we believe also that over time it demonstrates that you're going to have fewer major ethical problems because it is a part of that culture. So another were videos. When we rolled out our three-minute ethics videos, we could actually measure how many people were engaged with those videos, how many people watched it every month. So in our minds, success was all around engagement with the employee community. Just by counting and just by demonstrating that, we could show that we were having an impact on the culture. But you've got to think of different ways where you can measure success because that is the language of business.
I'm curious, in that engagement, did you try to connect to sort of risks or sort of positive metrics? For example, the attrition rate or preventing employment problems are big cause for companies.
Right.
And I'm just curious because it is not a it is direct
Yeah.
connection, but it's actually hard to show. I'm curious if you were considering solving it, and if so, who did you
Yeah.
work with? How did you go about it?
Yeah, we did, and we did it through the employee engagement, the employee surveys. Most companies now do surveys of employees and how they feel about the company, and we were able to demonstrate a meaningful bump in the areas of the questions of do you trust your leadership, and is this a company that tries to do the right thing? Are you and comfort around raising issues, and that went up substantially as a result of these programs. So a lot of this it comes down to do you measure how your employees feel and how do these numbers around engagement, transparency, and trust, and when those numbers go up, then people tend to stay longer and attrition goes down.
So in the end, you kind of have to build essentially a business case for integrity.
Like anything else, Olga. I mean, I think it should be obvious in one sense, but it was interesting. I was talking to some folks at Airbnb, and I left the company 4 or 5 years ago, but they were commenting on how few issues they've had in the area of internal ethics. And I think everyone puts it down to this idea that well, we invest in the culture. We invested in this culture of doing the right thing. The nice thing about ethics and integrity programs, they don't have to cost much money. I can tell you a little bit later on about our one budget item. But our videos were done with, here's the camera crew that we use for all of our videos. It's my cell phone. The ethics advisor program costs nothing. Or the orientation program, the integrity and orientation costs nothing. So we spent $3,000 total on Integrity Yetis, which I'm happy to tell you all about. But it doesn't have to cost much money, but it can really move the needle.
Well, let's do talk about it because we are coming to the end. We have about maybe a few questions left, and let's do talk about that one budget item. And I have a few more questions, but I definitely want you to give you an opportunity to share those examples.
Sure. I'll talk about Integrity Yetis. But one thing that struck us when we were looking at building an integrity program is that people were never rewarded for raising good questions about things that were going on in the company around integrity or a code of ethics. And if you want to move behavior, you need to recognize it. So we got these water bottles, these metal Yeti water bottles. They're very nice water bottles. And we get them, they come with a nice powder coating and you can have your logo put on. So we put the Airbnb logo, and we had an integrity slogan called Integrity Belongs Here, sort of a play on Airbnb's mission of belonging. And then we took the water bottle, these nice water bottles, about $30 each. And whenever somebody asked a good question, raised an issue around the code of ethics, raised a good question, they would get an Integrity Yeti award. The ethics advisor would give that out. And you started seeing these Yetis, water bottles, popping up on desks all around the company. People would use it for their water. And to give you an example of how powerful this can be, Olga, I was at my standing desk one day, and someone comes over to me, introduces himself to me. He's a mid-level manager in the marketing department. I said, "Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for stopping by." And he said, "Rob, I couldn't help but notice when you left your desk a little while ago, you left your screen on. You didn't lock your screen." And I thought, "Oh, uh, I'm getting called out here for a security violation." And Olga, I got to admit,
Here's the compliance conversation,
seriously,
Rob.
no, and I got to be honest. As much as I think about ethics and compliance, you know what my first reaction was? It wasn't a good one. My first reaction was, "This guy's calling me out for a security violation. Come on, give me a break. There's nothing on this screen that is in any way sensitive. I'm
Rob,
gone
you're
I'm gone for 5 minutes to get an iced tea and go to the restroom. I'm in a secure badged building. There's nothing on the screen that's of any sensitivity whatsoever. Give me a break." However, here's the good news, Olga. The good news is I didn't say what came to my mind right away, because after that first thought, a second thought came to mind. The second thought was this: how great is it to work at a company where a mid-level manager is comfortable walking up to a senior executive leader and calling them out for a security violation? This is really great stuff. So first thing I did was thank him. I said, and he was. I said, "Look, you're absolutely right." I said, "How embarrassing." So of all the people in the company, I ought to be setting the right example here, and I failed. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming by to let me know about this. And he showed me how, with a quick little keystroke, I could easily lock my computer next time. And I immediately got in the habit of doing it because, Olga, people watch leaders. I like to say that leaders are the thermostat for a company. A thermometer takes the temperature of a room, a thermostat sets it. And by their words and their actions, leaders are creating the temperature where everyone lives. They're creating the climate for an entire company. Everybody's watching you, like it or not. So you've got to be the one to step up. But anyway, I'll go back to the guy that called me out for a violation. The next big company meeting, I stand up and I tell the story of how I was called out for security violation. And I said how much I deeply appreciated the fact that at Airbnb, people are comfortable raising these sorts of issues, even against the senior leader. And I gave this gentleman an Yeti, an Integrity Yeti, in front of everybody, and he got a big round of applause. When I left the company a couple of years later, I got this email from him, and he said, "Rob, I just want you to know, 6 years I've worked at this company. That was my proudest moment, getting that $30 Yeti." So, small things, small recognitions by leaders in this area can really move the needle when it comes to culture and integrity. And that was a good lesson for me about be ready for the integrity moment. You never know as a leader when it's going to hit you, when you're going to get a question, when someone's going to come up to you, and you're going to have to respond quickly in the moment. And you're going to have to do it properly, do the right thing. And the importance of recognizing people when they do step up.
Oh, I love that story. I'm just gonna take a quick pause and reflect how much I love
Reflect on
it.
the story for a moment. Yeah, yeah, that was powerful to me. That moved me. But little things like that can make a huge difference when you're a leader. You're always on. You just don't know when that moment's going to come. Be ready.
Yeah, and I love that you share it through stories. I'm a sucker for stories. I love stories. I love listening to stories. I love telling stories. I just love stories. They're so amazing. You just made my day. Thank you for that. I do want to reflect on that thermostat idea because I think that's a really powerful distinction between thermometer and thermostat. And so you're setting the temperature as a leader, and you gave some really good examples around that. Anything else? Any other ways we can be thermostats? Because I tell when I was general counsel, when I had folks on my team, I tell them, independent of their title, even the most junior legal professional is a leader in the company, visible leader in the company, because legal departments are never overstaffed. You always work basically alone with a big unit of business. They look up to you and watch you independent of your title, age, and seniority. And so that idea of a thermostat, of being one as a legal leader in the company, I think is incredibly powerful and important. So at any level, what can leaders in the in-house legal department can do to set the right temperature? Any examples, frameworks? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about integrity. They think, well, I'm here for business, and this is not really an integrity thing, or integrity is too personal. I think that leaders in all departments, particularly in the legal department, they have to understand that integrity is part of the job and that people are watching you. One thing I didn't fully understand until I wrote the book and went out and did some research, integrity is actually contagious. It's not something you either have or you don't have. What I learned is that all of us are tempted every day, that integrity is gray. And we're all tempted to do things that are in our self-interest. And often we're tempted when there's silence. Silence and ambiguity are the enemies of integrity. What actually impacts people in their daily temptations in the gray items is how do others act? We all want to feel that we've got integrity. We all want to feel that we're as good as the people that are around us. So you can influence others by the way that you act. So I think all of us have to understand as leaders that people are watching, people are listening, and people are influenced by what we do in their daily jobs. So you got to show up every day.
Rob, you and I can talk for a long time. You tell good stories, you provide frameworks, and you speak my language. But unfortunately, we've come to the end.
They're going to cut us off, Olga. They're going to pull the plug.
I mean, I control the buttons, but
Okay.
sure, I will do that. But we covered a lot of ground, and you shared a lot of stories and examples and framework, and I really appreciate um, all of that. What is one thing you want people to take away from this conversation, if they remember or do nothing else? What should that one? Okay, two, three, if you can be succinct.
Well, let's do this. I think too often people think of integrity in business as separate. Like, oh yeah, integrity is nice, and we'll make a donation, to the local little league team at the end of the year. But Rob, this is business. This is business now. And I think what we're seeing is a shift in the world. Leaders have always been expected to deliver bottom line results, but increasingly, the spotlight is shining on leaders and companies are being pushed harder and harder to do the right thing. So I think being a leader is harder because now you've got to deliver bottom line results, but you've got to do it in a way that resonates with values, and you've got to show that your business is a positive force in the world as well. So today, integrity, I think, is woven throughout the fabric of business. And if you get it right, like it's a double-edged sword, right? If you get it wrong, integrity can wreck your brand and send your career spiraling. But if you get it right, I think it can actually be a powerful force to drive your business forward and be even more financially successful. There's so many studies. Ethisphere does their world's most ethical companies. And one of the things that's most fascinating is that the companies that are the most ethical also outperform the market and outperform their peers. So I think we have to get away from these old notions of ethics and business are separate. And now I think ethics and integrity are a critical part of business.
I can't say it better myself. Thank you so much, Rob. I speak for a lot of people that really enjoyed this episode. Thank you, Ashley, for vocalizing. This was incredible. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And just fun fact, I do this conversation so I can catch up with leaders like you because it gives me a perfect excuse to one, learn and two, share, which are my two favorite things to do. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining and being active in the chat and sharing your support for ethics and integrity. It's amazing. I love Rob's message that ethics and integrity can multiply the impact for you as a professional and as a leader and for your company. That is very powerful. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They are an act of courage. Remember, the future of law is bright. Enjoy your in-house practice. It's an adventure of a lifetime. See you soon.